Welcome to this next podcast about solitary places. In the meantime, Peter will have done the one after the one about Mark 1:35 and responded to what I said there. But this is the next one where I want to quote you from Matthew chapter 6, verse 6. And it's another example of Jesus and what he gets up to or encourages in us in quiet spaces, in quiet rooms. And I've always had this love, I said last time, about quiet spaces, somewhere to go to where I can get away from people for a while. It might be to do with the inner introvert in me. But, I used to have a place when I was a teacher, a little room at the back of the science lab where I could go and just get a bit of space from all that was going on in school during, say, a lunch break for 10 minutes, 15 minutes or whatever. I had a little study that I think I mentioned in one of the earlier podcasts when I was in Lancashire for 17 years, that if I turned my chair through 90 degrees, it became my quiet space, my place where I got away from distraction and focused for a while, and where God usually spoke through the silence, and I just tried to listen in my weakness, really. So there's lots of places like that, just as there are out in the wilds, and the weather's not been good enough lately for me to film out in the wilds much, hence I'm back in here. But I remember, for example, going on a moorland in Orkney where nobody else was around. And it was a really powerful time, but it also felt a bit like when Jesus was in the wilderness just after he'd been baptized, that we talked about at the start of this Lent series. And then at the end of it, where the devil started to get at him, there was a battle going on. But my battle was a physical one that day. I turned out to be walking through a big colony of bonxies, great skewers, which are really nasty birds, a bit like the size of a gull, but brown in colour. And they're predators. They're really nasty birds. And they dive bomb you if you walk through their colony because they don't want you in amongst the chicks and the young and the eggs and whatever. And it felt like I was getting a physical attack. But there was also a part of me thinking, well, maybe this is just a typical metaphor for what it's like sometimes when we go into quiet places. But at the end of it, there's a ministry to be had, and there's a new way of thinking, which is, of course, what Jesus did after he came out of the wilderness. So the passage I just want to read you is this one. It's very simple from Jesus. It says, when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Matthew 6:6. That's what we need to do. This Lent, can I encourage you to spend a short amount of time at least, just without distraction, focusing and listening to what God might want to say to you today. Cheers.